What? You looking for trouble, mother?
Boy, you'd think there were 10 of me.
Not so fucking tough now, are you, bitch?
Ah, you remember the gun?
I've never met nobody got away with anything, ever. Grab the check, meet me out front.
Start the car! Shit! Fuck! Shit! I bet you don't know this much in child support.
The movie opens in front of a branch of the Texas Midlands Bank, where a clerk is walking to open the bank and begin her shift. In front of the door, she is held at gunpoint by two masked men who push her to the floor and demand to be taken to the cash drawer. She points out that the money is still in the safe and can only be taken out by the manager, so for the moment, there's nothing to steal. After calling them stupid, she pays for her remark by being shoved back to the floor and taunted by one of the robbers. Moments later, the manager arrives, and before he has the chance to react, they knock him out cold at gunpoint. The robbers take off quickly, and we learn that they're not strangers but brothers, Tanner and Toby Howard. Toby, the younger and more cautious of the two, yells at Tanner for losing control, first for hitting the manager, and then for speeding away recklessly. Tanner, on the other hand, is visibly thrilled, almost enjoying the chaos of the robbery more than the money itself. Wasting little time, the Howard brothers target another Texas Midlands branch in Olney. Once again, they storm the bank, weapons drawn, and demand loose cash. An elderly customer watches them with surprising calm, even making snide remarks as if unimpressed by their crime. One of the brothers asks if the old man has a gun, which he admits to having it with him. Tanner tells Toby to get rid of it, so Toby takes it from the man and puts it on the counter. When the brothers finally leave, the old man takes his own gun and shoots at them. Luckily for the Howards, he misses all his shots, and they manage to escape safely. Back in their car, Toby once again reminds Tanner to stick to their carefully laid out plan, and that they're going to rob banks in the morning when there aren't customers around. Tanner just laughs it off. They later arrive at a ranch, where they bury their getaway car in a field to hide the evidence. That evening, the brothers sat on the porch of their mother's old farmhouse. Tanner looks around and calls the place ugly and runs down. Toby, however, defends the ranch, pointing out that while Tanner was in prison, he alone was left to care for both the land and their terminally ill mother. Their conversation takes them inside her old room, where a hospital bed has been laying empty since their mother passed away some weeks ago. Toby reflects on the hardship of her final days, while Tanner tries to act nonchalant, despite clearly being emotional.
I fed them skinny cows.
Never took you for the go-to guy for house cleaning.
No. Fuck her. She never wanted nothing to do with me anyway.
Toby reveals that Tanner has been left out of their mother's will, which doesn't surprise the older brother. He thinks their mother did it as a lesson for rebelling against their abusive father and shooting him dead, which landed him in prison. Toby also reveals that the ranch is at risk of being seized by the end of the week due to Toby's unpaid child support to his ex-wife. Meanwhile, over at the local police station, the two bank robberies come across the desk of Texas Ranger Marcus Hamilton. Marcus, an aging but sharp officer, is approaching mandatory retirement. His younger partner, Alberto, hands him the case, noting that the FBI isn't interested because the stolen sum is trivial, about $7,000 in total. Still, Alberto thinks this case might give Marcus one last chance to prove himself before he's forced to hang up his badge. Together, they head out to question witnesses at the First Texas Midlands branch. To their disappointment, there's no surveillance footage available because the bank's security system was undergoing upgrades at the time. The manager and the clerk both think that the culprits are locals, judging by their accents and clothing. They know the boys are Caucasian, but their faces were well hidden. A call from the Olney branch also confirms they have no video footage of the robbery. Even with little to go on, Marcus suspects these aren't random junkies. He thinks that the culprits are planning to gather a larger sum of money by carefully robbing many small banks for loose cash instead of stacks of hundreds. Soon enough, they'll rob other banks, and Marcus is waiting for them to slip up.
They aren't done yet, I'll tell you that. They're trying to raise a certain amount, that's my guess.
In another town, the Howard brothers grab a meal at a small diner. Tanner asks Toby about his kids, and Toby admits he hasn't seen them in a year because of unpaid child support. Tanner tells him half-jokingly they can just rob more banks to cover it. Toby shrugs him off and continues eating, but Tanner's reckless side emerges again. He leaves abruptly, claiming that he's going to the toilet. However, he's out to rob a nearby bank entirely on his own with only a young woman working inside it. Toby gets caught up in a pleasant conversation with a waitress, who offers him a position as a cook if he ever needs a job. By the time Toby realizes his brother's antics, it's too late. He storms out of the diner, leaving the waitress a generous tip, and finds Tanner running toward their car with cash stuffed in his shirt. Furious, Toby yells at him for improvising and deviating from their carefully plotted scheme. Tanner, however, seems unfazed, enjoying the adrenaline of another robbery. The two drive off, eventually stopping to bury their current car and exchange it for a new one. They head to Tanner's trailer in a wide-open field. Tanner explains that he's allowed to park his trailer there in exchange for shooting coyotes for the landowner. While Tanner packs, Toby glances in the trailer, finding pictures of them as young boys. News of this fresh robbery quickly reaches Marcus and Alberto. They race to the bank, and on the way, Marcus keeps throwing out half-hearted racial insults to Alberto, who's half indigenous and half Mexican. He seems to be used to the older man's antics.
If you can stay sober long enough, knowing how you Indians like the bottle. What y'all done? You burning this field?
Why in the shit would we do that? 21st century, I'm racing a fire to the river with a herd of cattle.
Oh, it's gonna burn out when it hits the brazos.
Arriving at the third bank robbery scene, they find witnesses who describe seeing Tanner flee. This bank, unlike the Midlands branches, had functioning security cameras, and the footage clearly shows Tanner robbing it solo. The clerk says that the robber got away in a really old and beat-up car. Marcus then stops by the diner where the brothers ate earlier. Some locals who are regulars at the diner recall seeing them with their masks off and describe the pair as brothers who seem to be from out of town. When Marcus questions the waitress who talked to Toby, she confirms the same, but seems to be on the robber's side because the bank has done harm to the local citizens. This sentiment is also mirrored by the local regulars. When Marcus asks for the hefty cash tip Toby had given to her as evidence, she refuses to give it up, saying she needs it to pay her mortgage. Marcus threatens to confiscate it, but she stands firm, demanding a warrant. Marcus gives up for the time being, and he and Alberto book rooms at a nearby motel, convinced the robbers are still in the area and will strike again soon.
We ain't robbing banks in lobby. We're not gonna watch this, are we?
Back at Tanner's trailer, the brothers prepare for their next move. Tanner loads his rifles into the car, but Toby warns him not to use them in their heists. They then head north toward Oklahoma, stopping at a gas station. While Toby goes in to pay, a flashy car pulls up, and the cocky young man who's driving the car provokes Tanner. Due to Tanner's nonchalant attitude, the man gets riled up and shows his gun. Before things escalate further, Toby returns from inside the store and beats the man down. Much to Tanner's amusement, the brothers continue on their way towards a casino frequented by indigenous folks. Their plan is to launder the stolen bills by exchanging them for chips, gambling a bit, and then cashing them out as legitimate money. Tanner indulges in poker while Toby waits at the bar, where a prostitute approaches him. Tanner eventually shoos her away, though Toby apologizes for his brother's uncalled-for rough attitude. The brothers cash out their winnings, receiving both cash and a check for the Texas Midlands Bank, effectively disguising their heist money. In Alberto's motel room, Marcus disturbs Alberto with his constant chatter, poking fun at Alberto's heritage while joking about his impending retirement. Alberto lets him do so for some time, knowing that his partner is actually anxious about his retirement. He finally tells Marcus to get lost. Unable to sleep alone, Marcus grabs his blanket and heads outside to sleep on the porch, where Alberto finds him in the morning. Their odd partnership shows a hint of genuine camaraderie beneath the banter.
Just when I was starting to feel sorry for you.
Indians ain't supposed to feel sorry for cowboys.
Meanwhile, Toby and Tanner meet with their financial advisor. Toby wants to use the stolen money to pay off the overdue loan and save the ranch from being taken by the bank. Their advisor doesn't mind where the money came from. He even indicates that he was the one who told Toby to rob banks because he's sick of them ruining low-income communities in smaller towns. He points out that Midland Bank took advantage of their mother's poverty to grab land for cheap, framing their robberies as poetic justice. Still, he warns they need an additional $47,000 by Thursday, or the ranch will be foreclosed by Friday. Toby plans to place the ranch in a trust for his sons, so his advisor urges to hire Midland Bank to manage the trust, so suspicion doesn't fall on them. Afterward, the brothers buy another used car to keep switching vehicles. They then split up, with Toby heading to his ex-wife's house to pay off the overdue child support. The two seem cordial, although distant. He assures her that the ranch will be secured for their son soon, though she treats it as more of a burden than a blessing. Toby spends time with his older son, telling him about the land's hidden oil reserves and warning him never to follow in his or Tanner's footsteps.
You may be hearing a lot of things about me and your uncle. Don't be like us. You hear me?
Back on the ranger's side, Marcus and Alberto sit at a diner across from another Midlands branch, waiting for the brothers. Alberto thinks that Marcus is intentionally wasting time to stall his own retirement, but Marcus is certain the pair isn't finished. As they stake out, Alberto reflects on how his native ancestors once controlled all this land, only for settlers and later banks to take it. Marcus listens quietly as Alberto highlights how history repeats itself through greed and exploitation. Later that evening, Marcus keeps his eyes fixed on the bank while Alberto rests at a motel. Meanwhile, Toby returns to their family ranch, where Tanner is loading up his gun for tomorrow's heist. They drink beer and talk on the porch, with Toby telling his brother to be gentle and keep his cool on the bank clerks tomorrow. They kill time joking and roughhousing into the night before waking up at dawn to prepare for their final target branches in Jayton and Coleman. They drive there using 2 cars this time, but when they reach the branch in Jayton, they find it closed. They decide to head to Coleman to follow their plan, which is where the 2 rangers are currently staying. Alberto wakes Marcus, who fell asleep while staking out. On their way to Coleman, Tanner pulls Toby over to suggest that they rob a bigger bank branch in Post instead of going to Coleman. He thinks that they won't get enough money from Coleman alone, and if they head to Post after Coleman, it'll already be lunchtime, so the bank would be full of clients. Toby reluctantly agrees, and they plan to leave his car outside of town to avoid suspicion. The Rangers are piecing together the brothers' patterns, and Marcus also deduces that Post will be their next target. Alberto seems unsure, but Marcus correctly assumes that the outlier bank that Tanner robbed near the diner was something unplanned, hence why Post is the only branch of Texas Midlands Bank that fits the criteria for the next target. So, the Rangers also make their way to Post. At the Post branch, Toby is worried because the branch is too big, but Tanner thinks it's good because there will be more money. The bank is crowded with customers, but the brothers push forward with their robbery. After getting everyone on the ground, Tanner orders the tellers to stand and grab the cash, while Toby guards the hostages. One of the customers manages to send a text for help, and the security guard manages to hide and sneak towards the brothers with his gun. Gunfire erupts as the guard and another armed patron shoot at the Howards, forcing Tanner to kill the guard. As the brothers flee, an armed group of locals gathers outside, firing at them as they try to drive away. Tanner takes over the wheel while Toby hides on the back of the truck. The armed locals are still chasing them using their own cars. Toby panics at Tanner for killing the guard and patron since he never planned to kill anyone. Tanner dismisses his brother's wails, focusing on getting away. Still on the way to Post, the Rangers receive a call about the robbery in Post, to Marcus's own amusement. They take note of the suspect's car and where they're fleeing to so they can get on their trail. Out of town now, Toby manages to sneak inside the passenger seat while the locals are still hot on their tails. Tanner inspects the gunshot wound Toby got from the escape earlier, telling him to wrap it up tight. He consoles his little brother, who seems to be in shock. Pulling over, Tanner hops off and uses a machine gun to hold the locals at bay until they start to turn around and drive away. The brothers eventually reach their second car outside of the city. Tanner, realizing the end goal is near, insists for Toby to take the money and exchange it in the casino, finishing their mission. He knows law enforcement will chase him down, so he offers himself as a diversion. The 2 brothers share an emotional farewell before parting ways. Tanner speeds off in the beat-up truck, driving so close towards the trial of cops and drawing them behind him. Marcus and Alberto join the pursuit as state troopers close in. Tanner drives up a hill, pours some oil all over the seat, and ditches his truck to explode a cop car behind him. He grabs his rifle and runs to take cover, aiming at the cops below before opening fire. During the shootout, Alberto is tragically shot in the head, leaving Marcus devastated. Marcus tells the incoming local trucks to back off while getting into one of them. He asks the driver to get him up the hill behind Tanner to finally catch him. Fueled by anger, Marcus borrows a rifle from a local and shoots Tanner dead from afar. Meanwhile, Toby manages to pretend that he's an innocent driver and slips past a police roadblock. He heads straight to the casino, where he launders the last of the money. At the bar, he watches a news report of Tanner's death, drinking some whiskey on behalf of his brother's sacrifice. He pushes forward, paying off the ranch loan at Texas Midlands and placing the land into a trust for his sons, just as his financial advisor told him to. Back at the ranger station, Marcus is now retired, but he wants to dig into Tanner's past. He discovers Tanner had killed their abusive father as a teenager and later spent years in prison for robbery and assault. As for Toby, his record is spotless. The investigators found nothing that links Toby to the robberies, and the waitress even says she doesn't recognize Toby's pictures. With oil rigs already in place at the ranch, he's set to earn $50,000 a month, making the idea of robbing banks unnecessary. With Texas Midlands managing the land's trust, his alibi is rock solid. Still, Marcus can't shake the feeling that Toby was in on it all. Determined, Marcus drives to the ranch. He finds Toby there.
Know who I am? I'm the man who killed your brother.
I know.
You could shoot me now and be within your rights. Mind if I sit?
Go ahead.
Thanks. How did you do it? Why? Why did you do it?
Their conversation is loaded with tension. Marcus presses Toby about why he went along with Tanner's spree. Toby finally admits the truth.
I've been poor my whole life. Told my parents, their parents before them. It's like a disease, passing from generation to generation. But not my boys, not anymore. This is theirs now.
Marcus warns him that the bloodshed will haunt him forever. When the two nearly draw guns on each other, Toby's family arrives. He diffuses the situation by telling them Marcus is an old friend who came by for a visit.
Hey, we're in a little house in town. If you want to stop by and finish this conversation, you're welcome anytime. If you stop by, maybe I'll give you peace.
Maybe. Maybe I'll give it to you.
The cycle of poverty has been broken, but the cost has left scars that will never heal.